Fred here, welcome back to the Gear Obsession channel. In this episode we will be taking a look at the SOG Jungle Primitive. Please stay tuned. The SOG Primitive is a large fixed blade knife bordering on the size of a machete. And on the back you can see that it does come with a sheath made out of ballistic nylon, and there is a hook and loop type of lock to go ahead and secure the knife into the sheath. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and we'll get started. I like to start with the boring part, and that is the sheath. You can see it has the SOG name on it, and it also has Jungle Primitive labeled on it. It does come with a little pocket that you could maybe put a sharpening stone in there or some other multi-tool or fire starter, your choice. Now, I did say this was ballistic nylon. I want to take it back because the only part that's ballistic is the cover to get into the pouch. And really, and the little locking thing. The rest is this cheaper type of nylon, which is not too impressive. Now, there is a little extra hole down here to go ahead and keep it from flopping around. You can just sort of tie it off. It does not have any kind of drain hole in it, so if water does get in there, which is a lot, it's not going to get in there too quick. There's no place for it to drain. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on, and then we'll take a look at the knife. We are almost ready to go ahead and start putting this through some tests. I want to go over some specifications really quick. First of all, it has a blade length of 9.5 inches. Overall length is 15.3. The weight is 14 ounces. This comes from China. Because it's from China, the steel is from China, and it's made of HCR 13 MOV. Very similar to OS 8. I notice on the website there's a lot of misinformation about this knife. It's being listed as having 420 on many websites. The hardness, Rockwell hardness, is between 56 and 58, which is a little bit on the tough side. Now, as you can tell, this is a clip point type blade, and it is partially serrated. That I don't quite get. I would not have put serrations on this knife if I were designing it. I would like to use that for fine work, if I had to do fine work. Plus, you already have a saw here on the back, or what they're calling a saw. Now, the handle is rather impressive. It has that typical SOG Craton Digigrip type of grip, and actually the grip is pretty good. We'll see once I start hacking on some wood here how it feels, but it feels really good. Now you can see there's two holes there, so you can lash this to a stick, make it into a giant spear, although the clip point is, is not exactly ideal for it, but you can do it if you want. And of course, you got a lanyard hole here, and you have a pommel here. The pommel's kind of skinny, so it really reduces the usefulness of it, but I could understand why, because it's just an extension of the tang within the handle. The finish on here is some sort of tinny hard case black coating. If you don't know what tinny is, that's titanium nitride. And we went over the sheath real quick. Let me see, this is from China. Oh, the cost. I paid about $49. I checked yesterday on the interwebs, and I saw it as low as $35. Alright, the only other thing I got to say about this before we go ahead and start testing this out is that basically the SOG website and a lot of other websites basically tried to say that this is a fixed blade knife that is a machete, saw, and hammer. So let's see how well it can do all those things. The first I'm going to do is use it as a machete, just try to take all this light green out of here, see how well that works. There we go. Okay, well, that took it off pretty good. Okay, not too bad. Next thing I want to do is go ahead and try to baton some wood. Now, I need to be very careful. Actually, you know what? Batoning with this blade is kind of tricky because it has this saw back. You really got to use this part of the clip. So maybe I'll test the saw first before testing the batoning. I'm going to go ahead and try it here. Well, the first complaint that I have is the grip. Okay, if you got to use the saw, you know, this handle was made to hold this way. You can see those indents. It's very comfortable. But when you're holding it this way, you can't. You really have to have your arm at a 90 degree with the knife, which is kind of awkward for me. Okay, so the next problem is it's starting to get stuck. And you can see how deep it got in there. And what's happening is, if you look at this knife, it's thin here on the top and it gets wider and wider. So what happens is this part starts catching the wood as you're going down. So this is not really a good saw. It's more or less maybe good for notching, but not really good for sawing anything much deeper than that. So next I'm going to go ahead and just chop on this a little bit, make sure everything is good as far as straight. Pretty good chopper. That was, it actually did that really simple. Very easy it went through. Wood chips are flying. So I'm kind of impressed. I'm going to go ahead and chop on this log a little bit now. Okay, the edge is still pretty good, no problems there. And actually I was able to loosen my grip up, because the way the grip is here. It's very grippy, that Digi-Grip, and your hands really sinks into this, so really nice there. So now I'm going to go ahead and try some batoning. Now again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to hit this portion of the clip here, so I don't ruin the saw. At least I left that blank. Actually, I'm going to call this a notcher instead of a saw. Actually, not bad. I'm pretty surprised that it works so well. Go ahead and do it one more time. Not bad at all. Now this time I'm going to go ahead and hit this saw part and see if it gets damaged at all. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just whack the top of this a little bit. Alright, the saw held up pretty good to some impact. So I guess it can be used for batoning, which is nice. Next thing, I'm going to go ahead and bang on the pummel a little bit. This will test the tip out, also test the pummel a little bit. You can see it's really beating that up pretty good. Alright. Alright, trying really hard to break this. Probably putting it through more than most people would probably use it. And I'll tell you, it held up surprisingly well. I really wasn't too impressed there with the way the saw was made at first, but as long as you realize you ain't going to use it as a saw and use it as a notching device. Next thing I want to do is go ahead and make a spear out of this stick, and we'll go ahead and try that. Now unfortunately I can't really go down to where I normally would go because of those serrations, so I'm going to have to use like the middle of the blade, and that's where this jimping comes in into play, and it's very sharp jimping, and you got to put a lot of pressure on there because the way that this is leveraged, you got to use the edge all the way up here. You can't just simply come down here. So it's not a comfortable knife. I'll tell you, I'm just going to end up giving this a point this way. It's not good for fine work, but I'll tell you, it's again, it's not working half bad as long as you work around its strange design. I think they just tried to make too much into one, product here. They're sort of doing a Gerber where they just feel like they got to put serrations on everything. Serrations. I'm just doing nothing but talking bad, and I know people love serrations. So if you like serrations, this knife is for you. You would probably give this a 10 out of 10. But you can see how fast it's getting sharp. So it does a very good job, even though you got to use the blade. I don't suggest you use your thumb here. Just sort of use a sweeping motion further up on the blade, and it really will sharpen very quick. If you try to do it like this and try to do some fine work, your thumb's going to get tore up on the jimping. So I wouldn't do anything that's too heavy a work. Maybe once you're getting down to the point there, you could work up a little bit into the closer on the blade, and then go ahead and use your thumb there until it's nice and sharp. And there we go. Sharp. Real quick, the point held up really well, especially at the driving it into that log. I'm very impressed. And there's no blade play at all from the handle. And I really was pounding, I was wailing on this thing. So I'll tell you, I'm impressed. But here's where I'm going to go ahead and rate this, and I'm going to tell you where it loses some points. I wouldn't have put serrations on this knife, and also they could have made this a lot more useful if they put some sort of a different type of saw that they could have maintained the thickness all the way up there, so they didn't have to reduce it down, because you basically lost the effectiveness of having a really good saw. and you're reduced down to a notcher. So as far as their claim about this being a good machete, saw, and hammer, I'd say it's a good machete, notcher, and hammer. Alright, so the other thing is the handle is very, very comfortable to hold while you're whacking. I like how I can loosen my grip and my hand is still in there really good, and they also give you the jimping up here that I just didn't use, and pommel is really good. So it's going to lose a point for this design of the saw. It actually should use, you know what, it's going to lose 2. It really is very disappointing what they did there, and you know, a lot of this is just look to make it look mean. There really could have been a much more effective saw here and maintained the thickness. It would have added a little more weight, but whatever. It's losing 2 points for that serious flaw. Plus it really restricts batoning. I'm sure if you pound on this enough, you'll start breaking these teeth, so you really lose a lot. Also, just to point out, if you notice, the tinny hard case coating actually stood up pretty good for all the abuse I just put it through. So I really was gonna give this a pretty bad rating just from what I read and saw on the internet and everything, but it really held up really well. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give this 2 ratings. If you get this for $35 or around that range, it's an 8 out of 10. If you're paying about $50 for this, because you know it's all Chinese and everything, and because of these design flaws, in my opinion, I give it a 7 out of 10. Alright, so thank you very much for joining me here at the Gear Obsession channel. I really appreciate every friend, viewer, subscriber, and you, and I hope you have a great evening. Take care.